Hey guys, Matt here with WP Power Sports, and today we got a 2017 KTM 250 SXF. We're going to rebuild the forks on it and show you how to do the dust seal and the fork seal. No, we haven't been posting as much content as we were, but we have a lot more coming up on schedule for you guys. So as I said, we have a 2017 KTM right here. This actually is a buddy of ours. I'm not going to name him because his bike is absolutely trashed and he does not take care of it. But as you can tell, the bike all around just needs some TLC. The forks are blown out, the linkage is bad, it smokes, there's some rust on some parts, and it only has 80 original hours on it. We won't give him too much of a hard time for this bike, but he could step it up, and that's what this is for. So, we actually have the WP fork seals and dust seal kit. It actually comes with the C-clips and everything holding the two forks together. We'll show you exactly where those go and how to install those. The first thing, like any forks we're going to do, we have to get the front wheel off. Very simple, it's just going to be a 17mm for the front axle itself, and then 4 10mm, which are the pinch bolts on either side of the fork. Gotta love working on dirty bikes. Oh, it's not the right place. So as I said, the axle bolt on all Euro bikes, well, all Euro bikes 16 and up, is a 17mm, and then you just need your 10mm to loosen up the pinch bolts. I have a bunch of extensions that I use as little punches for axles because sometimes axles get a little tight. So first what I do is I take, again, the axle bolt is a little threaded out, just hit it a little bit to make sure it's starting to move.
The dirt coming off.
You see that? So now with Euro bikes, I mean, if you have a Euro bike, you should be greasing your axle periodically, so you should know how an axle is or looks like on Euro bikes. But if for some reason you don't and it's your first time taking off the front wheel, the axle itself, the axle bolt threads into the axle itself, and then there's another almost cap. That's actually plastic. That cap in there where it looks like there's that 10mm bolt. So you don't really want to hammer on crazy because you can break through that plastic. So you just want to get on there just a little bit, quick taps, light taps, it'll start moving. Once it starts doing that, it's basically all the way out. And then what you're going to want to do is lift the front wheel to get the tension off the axle. I always put my foot under the front wheel to kind of lift it up. It acts as a third hand. And then I hold the wheel, and then there you go, the axle comes right out. Alright, so now your wheel is off. We're just going to put this to the side because we don't need to do anything with that anymore. The next thing you're going to want to do is what I like to do here is take the fork guards off and then the caliper. You're going to need 3 8mm are holding each fork guard in, and then 3 over here, and then there's 2 10mm bolts holding in the caliper itself. Alright, so again, 3 8mm bolts holding the fork guards on. Alright, same thing on the other fork leg. Then we're going to swap over to a 6mm to actually get the line clamped out. Now we're going to grab a 10mm and we are going to take off the front caliper. Now what I like to do for the bolts of the front caliper, I just throw them back onto the front caliper itself so we don't lose them. I just lay it on top of the bike just like that where it's out of the way. It's not going to get in the way, caliper's not going to be dangling around too much. It just stays right there on the seat, and then we have full room and access to take the fork out of the triple clamp. Now the last thing to do is just not take out, but loosen the other 4 pinch bolts for the upper and the lower of the triple tree, which is actually clamped onto the fork itself. What I like to do, I don't know if you noticed that, I always hold the fork when I'm loosening the last bolt that's clamping it down, because sometimes it just will fall out. And then you don't want to drop or ruin your lower fork leg, but this one, not that bad, just got twisted. Twisting it will help release the tension, and there we go. We got our left fork out. There you go. Just like that, you got both your forks out, not too hard. And then now what we're going to want to do is clean the fork itself. Again, you don't want to work on a fork if it's dirty. So you don't need to go crazy because we're going to have to clean the inside and the outside again. There's just dirt all over, and that's our buddy's fault. We don't want any of that getting in the internals because then we're going to have to try twice as hard just to get it out to make sure. These rags are like just cheap normal mechanic towels. They have some lint on it, and you don't want those for internals. So if you're cleaning inside of an engine or inside of any suspension, you don't want that lint getting in there mixing with the oil. It's not going to like mess it up, but you want everything to be super clean in there. So that's when you use these, which are the blue mechanic towels. They have no lint at all. Alright, so now We have the forks clean for the most part. They're not spotless, but they're a lot better than what they were. The first thing of what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna actually wanna take the fork cap off. Every bike has different fork cap wrenches. The Euro bikes have their own special style fork cap wrench. Motion Pro makes a great one. It's the 50mm by 12, which is exactly what the WP AER forks call for. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna put it in the bench vise, and it's gonna work just fine. All right, so we got the towel in here. We got the fork right here. We're gonna clamp it where the lower triple clamp clamps onto it. That's the most reinforced of the upper fork leg. So you do not wanna, I mean, you're fine if you go here, but just stay here. Not clamping down too tight, it just won't spin. It should just break just like that. There you go. So now that this is up, I'm gonna loosen it. Once it's, you hear that click, that's how you know you're at the end of your threads. And then you just pull, fork tube down, just like that. This contraption I have right here is just very simple, made to drain the fork oil itself. It's just a normal oil pan with a 2x4 per se, a piece of wood. All you do is just laying it like that, letting the oil drain, just like that. And then what I do is I rest it up on the bench vise itself. You don't want to let the forks drain too long. You just need to let it drain for about 5-10 minutes. You don't need to do any more than that. So we'll let it drain, we'll get back to it and see how they're looking. You want to just screw the fork cap back on. You don't need to get it all the way, you don't need to tighten it down, just to get it enough where it's not going to pop out. What we're going to do is we're going to now work on the bottom of the fork to unthread the chamber itself from the lower fork tube. So what you're going to want to do is grab a flathead, and you're going to want to take this rubber cap off. This actually is just a rubber boot, locks out the bolt. You see that? Don't zoom on me. Zoom on the bolt.
Yeah, there's the bolt.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So now, what you're going to want to do is get your 19mm socket, because we are going to loosen this bolt. Now the hard thing, not hard thing, but
tricky part.
Well,
is that not good?
That's not supposed to be happening.
That's what I figured.
Well, I guess we'll see what our buddy has done to this fork. So, the trick I was telling you about is you're going to want to loosen this bolt, but a lot of times when you do that, it spins the whole fork. So people are like, how do you tighten the fork tube to where it's not going to want to spin? Very simple. You get the fork, you get the front axle, you put it in the fork just like that, lean on its side, and there you go, you have leverage. Hold the fork down, and then just like that. There you go. I don't like actually having the fork on the ground. Wood just acts as a cushion. It won't ruin the metal or anything like that. So, now sometimes it threads just out of the chamber just fine. Other times you need an impact. This bolt sometimes is going to get stuck. You're going to keep turning it and it's just going to get stuck there. All you have to do is press down a little bit and it should release air and pop this off the chamber itself. If not, you can try grabbing it with needle noses or something, but 9 times out of 10, this will just get stuck sitting here. All you have to do is just pull up a little bit. Okay, I don't know if they can see that, but that is the chamber itself in there. You can see it right here. Now I have play. The fork is extending past of whatever it did because the chamber is not bolted into the lower fork. So now they're finally separated. Loosen this back up, the fork cap back up. You're gonna just slowly pull the chamber out. The chamber looks pretty good. Nothing looks bad, no excessive wear, no rust. So as much as the seals blew out, it didn't allow water inside, so that's good. So we're gonna put this aside and let this drain. What I do is I set it just like this. It's actually important to set it either like this or straight up and down. What I do is I go like this, just put a rag right here so it cushions it from there. You don't want to lean it up on the damping rod itself. These are very delicate. You don't want to warp it, you don't want to bend it, you don't want to ruin it at all.
More noises.
It's a C-clip. He was running with force. And this guy rode on the track. Like, it's not like he just rode every now and then. Like, he rode on the track Saturday. And today's Monday. So what this actually does is holds this plastic washer in place. See that little groove right there? Right there?
Yep.
That's where this fits in. So We're gonna have to put that on. Good thing we took it apart through the fork seals because that's not supposed to be like that. Next thing to do, well, last thing to do is take the dust seal off, take the fork seal clip out, separate the tubes, and clean everything. So how to do that? You want to get a flat head. You can have a bunch of different sizes. You want them on the smaller side because you don't want to ruin the fork. So what you're going to want to do is get in the crack or the space between the upper fork leg and the dust seal itself. And you're just going to feed it in just a little bit like that. And then you're going to turn. You're going to work around it nice and easy, nice and slow. And the dust seal, per se, sorry, will just pop right out. Once you get that much out, you can just pull the whole thing out. And there you go, your dust seal's out. Now the next thing to do is there is a clip inside. See that clip right there? Okay, so it's like a C-clip, but KTM's weird, so there's only one way to grab it by. You have to grab by that way, get a flat head, and pry that open. If you try separating the fork tubes without that, you'll ruin your bushings, and you'll actually ruin your fork, so it won't separate. That clip is holding it in. You're going to get the flat head just in there. There you go. And once it's up, you're just going to slowly feed. And there you go. Your clip is out. What you don't want to do is get a torch and just have low heat just like this. You don't need to have it going crazy. Just a little bit of heat to warm up the bushings inside. What that does, it'll allow to cut out any risk or actually minimize any risk of ruining the bushings itself and just separating the fork tubes. It makes it a lot easier. So you're just going to heat it up, spin it, make sure it's heated up evenly around the bushings. The bushings are going to be right here and here. So you're not going to be going all over here, not going to be going down here. It's not going to do anything. You want to stay right around here. And just like that, you're good. And you're going to use a slide hammer action to remove the fork seal. So you're going to go pulling against each other. So I get to right there. You hear that? And then I just do 1, 2, and then on the second one, normally comes out. So 1, 2, never mind, 3. All right.
Third time's charm.
Third time's a charm. That's all you got to do. And these are actually what we're going to be fixing. So this is the upper bushing, the lower bushing, washer. Separate the washer, and this is the fork seal itself. Then the clip holds the fork tubes on, and then the dust seal goes on, holds everything back up. So when they're sitting in the fork, this is how it's sitting, just like that. We're going to take everything off, clean everything. So now this bushing right here has a little crease right here where it connects. You're going to actually get your fingernails in there, widen it so gently, and just lift it off the lower fork tube, just like that. Put the parts down as you take them off. So for example, the upper bushing was the first thing we took off. We're going to put that at the top. Then we're going to take the lower bushing, just like that. We're going to put that right below that. Then we're going to put the washer. And the washer has a flat side and a rounded side. The rounded side faces the fork seal and the dust seal. And then fork seal, that we're going to come off next. Then the C-clip, which is right here. That's going to be next, and then the dust seal, just like that. So now we have everything separate and disassembled, and all these three are going to be junk because we have the new kit that comes with the fork seal, the clip, and the dust seal. So we don't need to keep any of these. Sometimes if you just get the fork seal and the dust seal, you need to reuse this. When you're cleaning the forks, you want to emphasize where the bushing sits. So this is where the lower bushing sits, where the upper bushing sits, and then that's where the clip itself sits with the fork seal. So you want to make sure all these three parts, especially this groove and everything, are spotless and clean. So hope I don't get this on you, Tyler, but just gonna spray a little bit, just get the excess oil off on the fork tube, and then I just spray the outer just to help that clean up. And then what I'm gonna do is then clean, especially where the bushings are. What I'm doing is I'm spinning it around, and my finger's slowly moving up to those places where it sits. So far,
starting lower.
Starting low, I'm spinning and slowly moving up to each ledge and pushing my fingernail with this into the grooves. Yep. And you want to get it as clean as you possibly can. Sometimes that C-clip groove is going to have some stuff that's not going to come off unless either A, you use the vapor blaster, or you're just cleaning it forever. You don't need it crazy clean, that groove. Everything else you want absolutely spotless. So you see how there's no dirt particles anywhere where the bushings sit, or the fork seals sit. You get that?
Yep.
But you see how there's some surface rust and grime into the clip. I'm going to spray it one more time with the brake cleaner. If it doesn't come off, It's really not the end of the world. Now that's good. Again, we sprayed the outside, so we want the outside to be as clean as we possibly can. Okay, last thing you want to focus on is the threads where the fork cap actually threads into. Very simple. Now we have the outer fork tube all clean. Everything's looking good. So we're going to keep that face down just like that, and we'll move on to the lower. Same thing, we're going to start with a fresh towel for this one. You're going to want to focus on where that bottom bolt fits in. So you're going to want to spray all around here, get that dirt, gunk out as best as you can, and then you're going to clean all in the fork tube to get the excess oil and any dirt that's out of there. Then you want to clean up the outer fork leg itself. Then you want to really put a lot of emphasis here because that's where the bushing again, the bushing, the washer, the lower bushing, dust seal, fork seal, and all that sits on. So you want to make sure that's all clean. Clean this out. As you can tell, forks are fairly simple. The most time you're going to be spending on is cleaning the actual parts. Once everything's clean, it takes 2 seconds to reinstall and install. Sometimes while doing this, you rough up some dirt and it goes back in there, so always spray it again. And then at this point, so again, this is the lower fork tube. This actually slides into the upper fork tube. You want to make sure that there's nothing that really catches a fingernail. Just a little inspection. Run your fingernails up and down and make sure it's good. If it is, you want to get the most fine sandpaper or Scotch spray you can get, and then rub it around and kind of get a crosshair hatching. Now we have the upper and the lower. We have the upper fork tube and the lower fork leg removed, cleaned, everything's good on that. So now what we're going to want to do here is I set the towels just right there so this doesn't lay on your workbench, whether your workbench is dirty or not or whatever. I always have that there. So now the last thing we're going to do is clean the bushings. Super, super easy, just like any part. Brake cleaner, part cleaner, spray it on there, get it on here, get the bushing, just clean it. Very, very simple. Yep. Not rocket science with this one. You just want to get the excess old oil off of it, washer, there we go, just like that. Alright, now, one last thing, we're going to just wipe it one last time, make sure there's nothing on there. And now we're going to come over here and we're going to grab our Motion Pro bullet. This is basically just a little plastic bullet looking type thing that goes right over the lower fork leg, which reduces any risk of ruining or ripping the dust seal and the fork seal installing onto the fork leg itself. Don't try being that guy that uses a plastic bag to put over it to install it, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to ruin it. So it's very simple. You grab the lower fork leg, grab the bullet, slide it on, just like that. Not rocket science. Put it right there, and now we're going to grab our fork seal and dust seal. So now we got everything out, and I stand, not corrected, but this kit also comes with washers. So we don't need to reuse that washer. We have the new C-clips here, new washers, dust seals, and fork seals itself. So we're going to take one C-clip and one washer. We're going to take one fork seal and one dust seal. We're going to head over here. So now installing the seals actually under the fork leg, biggest thing is to use a good amount of grease. We use Race Tech. Race Tech is just great grease. All you're going to want to do is just get the grease on your finger like that. And you're going to focus on the outer where it presses into the fork leg, and then also the inner where it slides from the lower fork leg. So just like that. Once your dust seal is lubed up or greased up, you're going to grab your fork leg. You want the spring of the seal to be facing down. So you're just going to slowly feed it on to the fork tube itself evenly. And I get it all the way down here because you want it out of the way when you're installing the fork seal itself. So then what you're going to do next is put the clip in. The clip can just sit just like that. Same thing, you're going to grease your fork seal itself. Focus on the inside and the outside. Now with the fork seal fully greased up and everything, we're going to grab fork leg again, and same way you want to just slowly, evenly slide it on. With the fork seal and dust seal installed, you're going to remove the bullet. We're going to put the washer in. Again, you want the flat side facing the bushings, the rounded side facing the fork seal. Then you want to go lower bushing and then upper bushing. Now installing the upper bushing, same thing. You're going to want to just open up a little bit and then slide it onto the fork leg until it clips, just like that. Now you know it's in its groove, it spins, doesn't go up and down, so you know that's good. What we need to do now is install the fork seal, drive that into the upper fork tube, and then install that C-clip, and everything's good to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this upside down, and you're going to just feed it in nice and smooth, nice and slow, just like that. I made a little contraption. If you have a bungee cord or anything that can hold up the lower fork leg while you're doing this, it makes the job a lot easier. Acts as like a third arm. So now with this clip, I wrap this clip around the dust seal carefully, just so it gets it out of the way, so I can only focus on driving that fork seal in. So now the next tool you're going to need over here is the actual fork seal driver. They have a bunch of different sizes. This fork is a 48mm, so we're going to use the Tusk 48mm fork seal driver. And there we go. So now, if you want to show that, Tyler, the seal is seated, and you can now see the groove of where that clip fits into. That's how you know your fork seal is fully pressed down. And then you're going to just slowly press this in. Press that in just like that. So now it's in, it's not in the clip yet, in its groove. So you're gonna want to do that. Get a little flathead and just poke that down until it clips. There you go. Now your upper and your lower fork tube is installed. Last thing you're gonna want to do is if any dust, what I do, any dust got in there while installing it, I just shove a towel in there, wipe it down a little bit, and then we're just going to install the dust seal. Some people install it just by pushing it, collapsing the lower into the upper fork tube all the way, and that closes it. You don't need to do that unless it's giving you a hard time. You can easily push it in, just until the lip is pressed all the way down, flush with the upper fork leg. Just like that, you have brand new dust seal, brand new fork seal, new C-clip, and new washer. And you're going to wipe the excess grease off, take the bungee cord off,
or fling it off, one of the two.
You're going to see some excess grease. That's normal. So what you're going to want to do is when you compress the first few times, you're going to see that ring. You're going to wipe that grease off and then compress to make sure that it's not leaking the oil itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually wipe that off right now. And now we're ready to install the inner chamber and get this fork done. Before we install the chamber, we're going to want to clean it. We're going to want to install this C-clip because somehow that popped off. Jesus. Same thing as the bushings. You're just going to wipe it on a rag and you're just going to clean it off. Clean the threads, make sure that's all clean. And there you go. Now we are all clean with the chamber. What we do is we're going to now slide this on. Just like that. That's how it should sit. So now this plastic washer can't go up and down. That bushing should be staying just like there. Now that we have the chamber cleaned, the upper and the lower fork tubes together, all we have to do is slide this in, bolt down the lower bolt, fill it up with oil, and then put the cap back on and we're all set. So, without further ado, slide in again. The dampener rod is super delicate. You do not want to just jam it in there. You want to slowly feed it in, no forcing, just like that. Open that up, same thing, thread it on. Then, you want to flip it back over, like so.
Get the wooden block again.
Wooden block. And you're going to compress it until you see the chamber back there again. Now I'll show you what it should not look like. If it's not fully compressed, you don't see the chamber. It's all the way down there. You should compress it a little bit until you see the chamber and the chamber is in contact with the lower fork leg. Once it is, you're going to take your bolt. If your O-ring is broken on this bolt or anything is messed up with this, clean it. O-ring is pretty simple to change out, but this one was fine, so we didn't have to do anything like that. So what we're going to do, basically just drop that on, just like so. Get it threaded on a little bit before we start going at it with the wrench. There you go.
19 mil again?
19 millimeter, yes sir. You just want to go slowly until you feel it get tight, and then we're going to do the same thing with the axle trick on the workbench. So now it's tight. You can see it's down in there. It was not sticking as high up as it was, and you can see now I can't pull up because it's attached to the chamber itself. These bolts are general rule are torqued around 25-30 pounds. Check your manual if you want to go crazy with spec. Realistically, these are super easy to torque down without over torquing. It's very simple. It's very hard to over tighten it. You just go like that, a little touch like that, just like that, and then you'll feel when it doesn't want to go down much more. Don't push back that, you will strip it out and ruin some internals. So now that is tightened down, what you can do now is get that rubber little garment, little cover, push just like that. And now your fork is all together. Last thing we have to do is loosen this up, and we have to fill it with oil. So now the WP AER fork, the manual itself states that it should have around 200 cc's or milliliters, same thing, of oil at all times in the fork. Now we are going to fill it with oil. You can use any oil measuring cup. It's very, very simple. We use Maxima for fork oil. You can also use Bel-Ray, anything, as long as it's not bad. Which is right there. You can get that if you want to show them that's 200 cc's.
Why not?
You want to loosen the fork cap again, and then once it loosens, you're going to slide the upper leg down, just like so. And what you're going to want to do right here is pour that in. Just pour directly onto the chamber itself, and the oil will drag it down. It won't spill. You don't want to get most of it in there until the drips start going a little slow, to ensure that you have as close as you do to the level you measured, which for us again was 200 cc's of oil. You get that. Slide it back up, screw on the fork cap. Yeah, we're not tightening this down too much, we're just getting it until it's finger tight and stops. Just like that. So now our forks are done. We're going to test it out and see if we're leaking. Also doing this is bleeding to make sure that there's oil all throughout it. So it'll get, if the first time you push it down it doesn't feel super smooth, as you do it, it'll get more and more smooth. If you look at an angle you can see the grease, but no oil. No oil at all. So that's a job well done. We're gonna move on to the next fork and then get these back on the bike. Wow. All right, well this one lost a lot of oil. Mm-hmm. God damn it. Now we have the left and the right forks done. No leaking at all, so the job is fixed. Now all we have to do is just tighten these caps down, get them in the triple clamps, call it a day. Just like that, get it to where it's tight. There you go, forks are done. So now everything's torqued down, everything's good, cleaned up. Now we're gonna slide into the triple tree and get them set. You want to go in, if it's giving you issues to get in, same thing, twist it on. So I always like to have it straight forward where the valve for the air pump connector is aiming out the front. There's 3 lines on WP forks for different settings to have it at. You have the 3rd groove, the 2nd groove, and the 1st groove. As you get tight like that where it holds the fork in place, you don't need to torque this down right now, you just need to get it a little tight to where the fork isn't going to drop. Same thing with this, you're going to slide this through triple trees. And again, we want it the same level as that one. So that one's the 2nd groove up. There you go, there's the 2nd groove up. Okay, so now we have the forks in the triple clamp, and most bikes, but definitely the Euro bikes, have the torque that actually needs to be. The bottom is 12 Newton meters and the upper is 17. And you're going to go until you get that click right there. With pinch bolts, you want to go over them a bunch of times to make sure they're at the same torque, because as you tighten one, the other one will get looser. Forks are on, clamp down tight, torque to spec. Now we have to put the front caliper on. So again, our bolts, we thread them in right in here so we know exactly which one's the upper and which one's the lower. On the KTM, pretty sure they're the same size. Yep, they are. And then now we're going to put the fork guards on and then get the front wheel on, and then we're all set. As we said, the axle's not terrible condition, but every time you take a wheel off or anything that requires greasing, just do it. Just clean it off. So what we're going to do is we're going to toss this in the parts washer. We don't need to turn the pump or anything. We're just going to get that in there, get it in there, and wipe this off. Alright, just going to grease it. So now we are finally ready for the front wheel to go on. So now, putting the wheel on, I use the same thing. I have my foot under the wheel to act as a third hand. And you're going to want to just slowly push it in the gap of where the pads are for the disc. And then push it up just like that. And look, I'm not using my hands at all. I'm using my... Damn it. Alright, we're going to have to clean this. Just going to slide that in. You're going to shimmy with your feet on the bottom of the wheel. Slowly push that in. And then make sure that's lined up. You have to go like that. And get stuck on this side. There you go. There you go. Just like that, your axle's in, especially greased. Then we're gonna put the axle bolt back on, which again is a 17 millimeter. Thread this in, just like so. So now what I do, again because there's pinch bolts that'll stop it from turning, I tighten it until the whole axle starts spinning. And you can see it spinning on the other side. And then once that starts spinning, what we do is we get our 10 millimeter pinch bolts, and you're going to tighten them a little bit on the opposite side to stop from spinning, so you can actually tighten down and torque the front axle. So once that is tight enough, you get back to your 17. You just go up just like that. You don't want to over tighten it, you really don't need to. Just make sure that's flush, and then you tighten all your pinch bolts. You want to tighten them a little bit at each time, because as you tighten one, the other one will loosen up. But just like that, you're all set. Then what, Tyler, was what, an hour and a half, 2 hours said and done with all left and right forks?
If that, not very long.
If that, so as long as you have the right tools, you don't need all the right tools, as long as you need the Motion Pro Bullet, as long as you got the fork steel driver, good grease, good fork oil, and some patience. Not a hard job at all. It takes less than 2 hours, and you'll save a couple $100 and bring it to a shop. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or any recommendations, or anything you want for us to make videos, please drop a comment down below. Please subscribe, share with your friends, the whole 9 yards. And with that, we'll see you soon, and